Hi guys, and welcome to the second season of Thunderstorms called Downpour. This series is written by Stacey Holt, artwork was provided and approved by Sisaat or Sisaat on Tumblr. I'll leave their link in the description box below, along with everyone that is collaborating within the series, which are Jane, who will be voicing Cat Noir and Adrian, Stacey Holt as Marinette, Sabine, and the narrator, Maddie will be voicing Aunt Amalie, Ashton will be voicing Natalie, Calvin will be voicing Gabriel and Hawkmoth, Brad will be voicing Tom, and Em will be voicing the judge. If you want to support the series, you can like, subscribe, and comment. Now, Chapter 13, The Verdict.
Good morning, beautiful.
He smiled, looking at Marinette laying beside him in his bed. Ugh, shut up. She giggled.
I'm glad you're a lot more comfortable around me now.
He said with a sigh of relief. You're right. When did that happen? She asked.
No idea, but don't be getting any ideas.
He smirked. I won't. She laughed, feeling him brush her bed hair out of her eyes. They lay there staring at one another for a few minutes in silence, but they knew it was a saddening silence. Today was the day they would say goodbye. Adrian pulled her into his arms, letting her lay her head on his chest. Their breathing played a duet back and forth as they sat there in silence until a knock at the door caused them both to sit up.
Yes?
He said, knowing that they wouldn't come inside.
Get dressed, Adrian. We need to be at the courthouse in 30 minutes,
Natalie said. Adrian sighed and heard her footsteps walk away and returned his gaze down at Marinette, seeing her give him a worried look. If he really is Hawkmoth, where is his Miraculous? She whispered.
I'm not really sure,
he said. Want me to go with you today? She asked, leaning out to look at him and seeing him frowning.
Yeah, that would be nice,
he said, looking over at her. She smiled and kissed his cheek, crawling out of his bed and tried fixing her hair. Adrian jumped out of bed and changed clothes while fixing his hair. He turned and saw her transform, smiling as he saw her jumping out of his window. He knew she would meet him outside of the gate. He knew Natalie wouldn't argue with his wishes either, especially since everything he has gone through.
Good morning, Adrian. How did you sleep?
She asked.
Fine. Marinette is outside waiting. She's coming to the courthouse with us. I want her to be there with us,
he said, walking past.
Adrian, I don't think...
I want her there, Natalie. She's my girlfriend. She has been for a while. She's been helping me through the situation with my father,
Adrian said, glancing over at Natalie. Natalie sighed and nodded in agreement, knowing that Adrian was not in the mood to argue.
Alright, Adrian,
she said. Adrian opened the door and saw Marinette standing outside of the gate waiting for him. He blushed and smiled, opening the gate for her. She stepped inside and watched them step outside of the gate.
Good morning, Marinette,
he smiled, pretending like he didn't just see her jump out of his window. Good morning, Adrian, she smiled back. Natalie rolled her eyes and entered the passenger seat as the bodyguard pulled the car around. Adrian opened the car door for Marinette, and she slid in, and he closed it behind him. He buckled himself in and put his hand on top of hers, trying to distract himself of where he was going. She smiled and rested her head on his shoulder as the buildings quickly passed by. The car ride there was silent as usual, but again, it was comforting. The light touch of their fingertips gripping as their car would hit a speed bump every once in a while. The car came to a stop and Adrian swallowed, seeing the courthouse outside of the car window. The courthouse was surrounded by Parisians, just waiting to get a glimpse at Hawkmoth and Hawkmoth's son. Marinette gripped his hand and lifted her head, letting him know it would be alright, and he took a deep breath. He opened the door, and a light flash of sunlight filled his eyes. Not only was the light of the sun in his eyes now, but he was being surrounded by people with cameras being photographed. People were shoving microphones in his face, just trying to get an exclusive interview of Hawkmoth's son. Adrian, come on, this way, Marinette said, pulling on his hand to follow Natalie. Adrian couldn't catch his breath and decided to follow Marinette, not bothering to excuse himself from the crowd of people asking him tons of questions. He followed them into the courthouse until they were inside a room with a lot of chairs. It was like a real courtroom that they had seen on TV. The bodyguard, Natalie, Marinette, and Adrian sat down in the stand, along with a few other people. The jury was already in their spots, and was sitting and waiting. Adrian looked around and saw the judge come in and began to get nervous. It's all right, Adrian, she whispered. The door behind them opened, and in came Sabine and Tom, who sat behind Marinette and Adrian, putting their hands on their shoulders with a warm smile. "Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Papa." She smiled. "No problem, dear," Sabine whispered back.
You asked them to come?
Adrian asked, confused. "They're your family too," she said, smiling. Adrian smiled and took hold of Marinette's hand, trying to remain as calm as possible. The door opened again, and the high heel clicking noise behind Adrian was just too familiar. He turned around, and he knew exactly who it was.
"Oh, Adrian!"
It was his Aunt Amalie.
Oh, hi, Aunt Amalie. Nice to see you again.
Adrian said, standing up to greet her, but was met with a hug. Marinette smiled as a woman that looked exactly like Adrian's mother hugged him with such comfort, and he hugged her back. Adrian let her go and looked down at Marinette.
Aunt Amalie, this is Marinette, my girlfriend.
He smiled. The sudden introduction not only caught Marinette off guard, but also Sabine and Tom as well.
Excuse me? What did you say?
Tom spoke up. "You're dating him? Really?" Sabine asked. Yes, Mom," Marinette said.
Does he know about Cat Noir coming around all the time?
Tom asked, trying to whisper, but it was a terrible effort. Adrian laughed and nodded.
Cat Noir is my friend.
He smiled.
Marinette and I have been dating for a while, actually.
He said. "Oh, you know she had a huge crush on you for the longest time. I've read through so many diaries." Sabine chuckled. "Mom!" Marinette screamed. Adrian laughed, seeing Marinette's face light up bright red. "We will talk about that later," she glared.
Anyways, Amalie, I was wondering if, depending on how the verdict goes, could I stay here in Paris with all my friends?
He said.
"Stay here? Where would you live?"
"Mom, could he stay with us? Please? You let Cat Noir stay with us so much. Please?" Marinette turned around, trying to plead. Sabine and Tom looked at one another and then to Marinette. "I'm sorry, Marinette, but there's no room permanently. We only have 2 bedrooms."
I don't feel comfortable with Adrian sleeping in the same room as my daughter. No offense to you, Adrian, but she is my daughter. I must protect her.
Tom said, determined, making Adrian smile, but still, his heart ached. Marinette sighed and looked over to Adrian, knowing their attempt failed. The door behind them opened again, and an identical boy that looked exactly like Adrian walked in, but was dressed slightly differently and his hair was styled with gel stood behind Amalie.
Well, let's see how the verdict goes. I may have an idea."
Amalie smiled, patting Adrian's back, causing him to give her a warm smile. Amalie and Felix went and took their seats and Adrian sat back down, glancing over at Marinette, seeing her face still red. He laughed as he was listening to her and her parents still bickering and joking about her dating Adrian, and what her diary said about her gushing and head over heels in love with him. It was funny to know that Ladybug was that in love with him, though now he was having to move away. He wished it could have lasted longer. He wished that he could have gone back in time and told her sooner, spent more time with her, did things differently, told her that he loved her sooner. Gabriel walked into the courthouse and snapped him out of his thoughts, and a whole set of thoughts overlapped those previous ones. He said he wanted to use the wish to bring her back. He wanted to bring her back for him. He almost felt bad. He almost yearned for it himself. Did that make him guilty too? Did that make him just as evil as Hawkmoth?
Gabriel Agreste.
Yes?
What do you plead?
Guilty, Your Honor.
The courthouse fell silent and everyone turned to look at Adrian as he just sat there, looking at his father, the same monotone expression, the same expression he did when his mother disappeared, the same expression at the funeral with no body, the same expression when he won every contest, the same expression when he would do anything. Why? Why wasn't he scared? Why did he not regret it? He was going to jail. He hurt so many people, and for what?
Father, why? Why did you do it? You're going to jail, and for what?
He stood up, not caring what the others thought.
You.
He said, causing Adrian to go silent. Thank you so much for watching. The next chapter will be out soon. If you haven't already, you can check out my other series such as The Butterfly That Brought Us Together, A Monstrous Night, Melting, Thunderstorms Season 1 if you haven't seen it, or if you would like to rewatch it. Or you can check out my Christmas special called A Merry Cat Christmas Special, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys!